Hey there, and welcome to this episode of the Leadership Lounge. And today I have with me, yes, I'm Tove Poulsen, and I am sitting here in Denmark. And with me I have Johan Alexanderson. Hey Johan, and where are you?
Hey, I am in Harpenden in England.
Alexanderson, that sounds Swedish, is that true?
That's correct. I'm born and
Yeah.
raised in Sweden and I lived there for 28 wonderful years. Now I moved over towards America, but not all the way.
Okay. So I have the privilege to work with Johan in Sweden, Västerås, for quite some years. We were both in the same leadership team, so it's kind of fun to get to work together in this way. We'll see
That's
how we
right.
do. At least we can't fight too hard. Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. So today we have with us Matt Rawlins, and we are very excited about that. The topic for today is the transforming power of mentoring and coaching. And we have a master coach and mentor with us today. Um, Here we are. Hey, Matt.
Hi, nice to join you guys. Nice
Yeah,
to
and
be involved.
where are you, Matt?
I am in Singapore, so I'm in your history right now in a literal sense. I'm ahead of you guys, aren't I? No, I'm in your future. That's right. I'm in your future.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
6 or 8 hours ahead of you, so it's
Ex
10 o'clock here. So
Excellent,
And
and
is there
significantly
still
warm, I
Corona in
think.
the future?
sorry. Yes, it is warm. It's very warm. Tropics. But right now, it's the cool part of the year. Unless you lived here, you wouldn't know it's cool. But if you live here, you know it's a little bit cooler.
Right. Okay. So I'd like to introduce something to you as well, Matt, because we have something here in Europe called the European Leaders Learning Community.
Hmm.
And it's a website, it's a Facebook group, and that's what this is a part as well, this
Yeah,
leadership lounge. So we started these lounges in March during lockdown. Well, many of us still in lockdown, and interviewing all kinds of different people on all kinds of different topics. And we will continue to do that. But this leadership community, it is really, focusing on Europe. We are just about 1,000. I had hoped we could reach 1,000,
wow.
for today, members of European leaders. It's a place where you can go for many types of resources. We have the first week of the month, there's 2 articles that are being released. And there's also 2 LDXs. And an LDX, that's a short talk, about 10 minutes, on the topic of the month. So we already have now quite a library of people, and resources on the LDXs and great articles. Then the second week of the month, that is this leadership lounge. The third week is a drop-in discussion where you have some again in sort of a studio, and people they can also ask questions. And then finally the fourth month, that's a monthly roundup. So yes, since you're here, you're already part of this group, but we
Yep.
really encourage you to invite others to attend. Other leaders, that could be new leaders that just emerged, invite them to this group so they can
Great.
be a part of this. So yeah, that's what you're part of, Matt.
Great. Sounds great.
Yeah, over to you, Johan.
Yes. So before we start, I just would like to introduce Matt a little bit more, so we know what we're dealing with, and giving you very good reasons why you should listen to this beautiful, beautiful man. So Matt has spent 20 years working in missions in Asia and the Pacific, and he also earned a PhD in leadership and communication. And right now, as you said, he's in Singapore, and he is a CEO of a marketing consulting company, and he also invests time in churches and in missions and doing consulting and other things.
Yeah.
And for me personally, I've met Matt a couple of times, not too many, but one of the first times was when I was just a little boy in my early 20s. And it was my first year staffing in YWAM, and Matt came, and I was invited to listen to him. And he did his teaching on tension and how important tension is for our growth and in our lives. And I have built my whole discipleship ethos on that teaching, and I've found it in scripture and in my relationships, and it's been a, what do you say, invaluable, one of the most important principles that I've had. So I'm very excited to have this time together with Matt.
Oh, thanks, Johan. I really appreciate that.
That's good. So I think as we're starting, since there's both mentoring and coaching in the title, if you could start us off, Matt, by just defining what's mentoring and what is coaching.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I looked up an official, because for me it's just different styles of relationship. So when I looked it up, and it tends to be different people have kind of different, but from a very practical point, it says mentoring is a more informal association focused on building a two-way mutual beneficial relationship for a long-term career movement, and coaching is a more structured. If I read something, it sounds absolutely, I'll bore myself to death. So let me just go back to thoughts. Mentoring for me is when you're in the same organization and you have the same experiences and you want to pass on life experiences and it's something that we share, then you go into a mentoring mode. If one of you is more in a ask questions, pull out of the other person, get them to be engaged in the process, not provide answers, then you're into more of a coaching process. So it can be both and either or situations in that. But a lot of the work that I do, is more around the coaching side with that. You might have if I just use in a marketplace sense language, or if I put it in a YWAM language, you might have a base leader who's going to mentor a group of young people or young leaders. That would be a mentoring relationship. But if it goes into a coaching relationship, or if she goes into a coaching relationship, then I ask questions, I help them to kind of work through it, I get into their world and help them to figure out what they want to do and then how to own the process. So for me, those are the distinctions that I would work with, although I rarely think along those lines in regards in very practical terms.
Great, thank you, Matt. Now, how on earth did you move from YWAM? Well, you still sort of part of YWAM, but into this business coaching. Can you tell us about your journey just a little bit?
Yeah, well, a short version of it was when I was doing my graduate work. I was actually studying YWAM as looking at organizations, difficult conversations, and looking at a model of difficult conversations within YWAM. And I was working with Landa Cope, who has been a friend for many years. And when she was running the APCs, Advanced Principles of Communication, I would go in and teach for 2 weeks with her. And I would teach a week on tension and leadership. And then we do a week of processing. And in that week of processing, we would kind of tag team working with people and engaging people and getting kind of refining, or for lack of a better word, kind of developing an arts in that sense of engaging people and helping figure out what their perspective was. Now, Landa took it from a perspective of the 360 model in regards to communication. I jumped from that into more of a coaching mode where I wasn't interested in a position as a communicator, which is Landa's brilliance. I was interested in helping a person find their voice, their leadership, and how to help them kind of walk into it. So I did that for, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years with Landa, and then started to incorporate it more and more in working with people that I was working with. And then pretty soon, almost on any project that I'm working with now, I will engage people and ask them to let's work through some of the heart issues that you bring to the situation that we're in, so that when we change, you can be involved and fully engaged in the change process. So in a short version, that's it. When I moved to Singapore in 2005, I was with YWAM Kona. I left in '05 and came here. So I've been here the last 15 years. And so I deal with tension, I deal with change, I deal with conflict and the human side of leadership and dealing with difficult situations. And I have to say, I just thoroughly love it.
Fantastic. So in working now with businesses, I know that you also teach in a business school. Now, how is that different than coaching, mentoring YWAMers, for instance, or within the church and being in this other sphere, you could say?
Yeah.
Or is it different?
Well, there's a lot of people talk about differences, and from my perspective, I suppose I would say there's really not much difference, because what I'm trying to do is get down to the human issues, and I want to go beneath either the personality or culture or the organizational dynamics, and I'm trying to go down to the deeper heart issues that are human. And when you get down to the heart issues, there's very little difference in people. People have the same basic dynamics. I'm afraid, or I'm frustrated, or I'm alone, or I'm angry, or I'm in pain. And those things are common to us all. And so a lot of the work that I do is just helping people get to the human issues. And as funny as it sounds, a lot of the work I do with my work here in Singapore is just helping to people engage humanity. What does it mean to be human in a system that is high task orientated? What does it mean to be human, to have emotions, to give permission to emotions? What does it mean to talk about things at a heart level? And so that's a lot. And so when you get to those places, it really doesn't matter. I have worked with, I use a rounded number, maybe 100 different nationalities or ethnicities around the world over these years. And people are people. We have far more in common than we when we get down to the heart issues. And that's really where I like kind of living and working. And so when I go into the work that I do as a facilitator, I don't really use the word teacher a lot of times because it's kind of a downloading of information, but I facilitate learning. And so I do that through conversations. I run learning groups. And, I have to say, you guys, I meet and work with more people in a month in my normal work here, just all spectrums of life, than I did in a year in my work with YWAM. So I just love the marketplace. I love engaging people. I love talking about heart issues with them. And I use the language with them, even though, some of them may not, many of them, well, I don't know, are Christian or not, but I use a language of a sacred space. So we're trying to create a sacred space. And that resonates with people because they want a place where they can share their heart. I think talk at a heart level and to be heard and not judged or fixed or solved or whatever the word we want to put in there. So I just enjoy it.
Oh, thank you. It's just so encouraging when people also have been many years with YWAM and then actually work in the mainstream world, if you could say like that, and then find a way to have a voice there as well. That's super encouraging. We have just finished the LDE, that's a leadership development encounter, and that's under this European Leaders Learning Community as well. So we had 100 participants from 40 different nations, I think.
Wow.
Just powerful, on Zoom. And in my little process group, there was a lawyer, and she's done her DTS and so on quite some years ago. She just wanted a bit of a refresher. And she said the same thing. I mean, the leadership principles is like, they are not that different, because it's to do with people.
Very, very well said. The people are people, and they want, there's the basic issues that they want. Doesn't matter. You could go to a tribal group, and how they interpret respect is one thing, but to be respected, all of us want that, to be valued, to be heard, to have a place, to belong. I mean, those are things that are not in a domain. Those are things that are in the heart of each human being. So, and the fun thing is, you think if after all my years with YWAM and missions, and you think, well, what does this have to do with the marketplace? But really, a lot of the things that I learned in missions with working in the community and those things was really just how to engage people. And I found those incredibly helpful tools to be able to work with wherever I go. So yeah. It's really great fun.
So Matt, you mentioned about tension, or well, Johan did later, and I've also been a victim of your question asking.
Yeah.
That is very powerful. Both Johan and I, we have heard you teach about tension versus balance. Now, balance sounds maybe a bit more like harmony or peace. But you seem to promote tension over balance. Can you just tell us a little bit about that? What is so significant about tension?
Well, half of the work of dealing with in leadership. There's so many things I would like to say. One of the orientations that I had to make in my own growth. I can remember years ago, I was running down the road, and there was I'd been in missions for 10 years, had gone back. My mom was dying of cancer, and Sarah and I were in Oregon for a break, and I was running down the road to get some exercise, and there's a couple of YWAMers walking up the road, and I was running down the road, and I thought, I don't want to run past them because I don't want to disappoint them. And so, but I didn't want to stop my run, because I wanted the exercise. So I'm stuck with the tension of, do I stop and meet expectations? Do I continue and do this? And so I was running towards them, and I thought, so I did what I typically did my whole life, is I turned around and ran the other way. And when I turned around and ran the other way, I had this, for lack of a better word, a divine sense at that moment. And the words that came to me were simply this: Matt, you're not running from them, you're running from yourself. Now that was a marker point for me. That was a very significant event for me, because what I realized was the tension wasn't the problem out there. The tension was the problem in here. I was afraid of what tension would reveal in me, that my own inadequacies, my own limitations, my own fears, my own brokenness, and that sent me on a journey for it's been 25, 30 years. To start to go, okay, I'm not going to run from myself anymore. If God is who he says he is, and I genuinely love God, and if God is who he says he is, and Jesus has done what he says he has done, then I have nothing to fear inside of myself. And so when I did that, and I started, then that opened up the door. I went back to school, and I started this study. And when I looked at difficult conversations, one of the major hurdles I had to change in my own thinking as I started to explore and look at it was, our fundamental view of tension is wrong, and I had to review tension and go, tension isn't, how do I say it? Tension doesn't mean something is wrong. So when I went back, and again, there's hours and hours of teaching and communication and great dialogue around this, but if you go right back to the garden, God let us, so there's tension in the Godhead, and then God. This is all before the fall. So then God takes a man and he rips a woman out of her. And then he says, now you guys put it back together. And this is before the fall. Talk about tension. So there's tension in the garden long before sin has entered it. And then we've got a tree, and it's the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So we've always had a knowledge economy that we're struggling with in this world. So God allows tension through a tree. And then he allows the serpent to come into the garden. And this is long before anybody, well, not long, but this is before Adam and Eve have made some very serious choices. And so God's view of tension is radically different than ours. And in fact, the very name, his very self-definition, it has tension in it. Is he three or is he one? So there was a fundamental shift that I had to start to go back inside of me. And let me be the first to say, you guys, and I want to be really clear with this. I'm a coward at heart. I don't like tension. This is not... oh yeah, now I walk to where to this day, I don't like tension. But what it gave me was freedom to be able to go, okay, God's not afraid of tension. Therefore, I don't have to be afraid of tension. So I got to put my big boy pants on, and I got to walk into a situation, and I got to try to talk about it as best as I can. And I'm still in process. I'm still working it out. But for me, that's been a radical part of my leadership in this process. The tension, the difference, that there's difference in two people, and that creates tension. And God loves diversity, so God's the author of tension. And I think there'll be tension in heaven, personally. But I don't think it'll scare us, because we'll have nothing to be afraid of. We'll walk into it and go, oh, what a great opportunity for God to show up. Well, what is God going to do now? Because this is going to be more exciting than before. So there's an orientation that we have to shift. It's a huge one, but it has to begin within me, within myself. And so as I started to do that then started me on this journey of saying, okay, God, help me to see tension from your perspective, and what are the principles that you work with. So I have a model that I've developed over the years that I work with, and I write, and I do a devotional, and all kinds of different things. But really, the kind of that point that I'm always working with, trying to help people realize is, for most leaders, those fulcrum points, those leverage points, are how you deal with tension. And to the degree that you deal with tension, to that degree will the quality of your leadership and the effectiveness of your leadership in the kingdom of God be held and maintained. And that's both wonderful and terrifying, all at the same point. So without going anything more, you got to try to shut me up, Tove, Johan. So, yeah.
No, this is brilliant. Just one more question alongside this then, Matt, and that is like, what do we need to overcome in order to embrace tension? You say you're still struggling with it in a sense, That's bad news for me, because you've worked on it for a long time.
Yeah, I think Paul makes it really clear that we are in process. So there's the tension of being saved and working out our salvation. So faith and work. So is it faith or is it works? And so when you start to really read the Bible, you realize that without a tension, without for lack of a better word, a biblical view of tension, you won't even be able to interpret the Bible, because if you think of it like a problem to be solved, you're going to be confused, because, well, is it faith? Well, is it works? Well, is it the future, or is it the present tense? Am I saved, or am I working out this salvation? Is it, all of these processes with it. So the essence of it is, here's when I'm working with people, here's 25 years of work reduced into a very simple point. And the point is simply this: the point of tension is to learn how to show up with minimum anxiety. And I'm better at that. I'm much better at that. So the goal is to be present in the midst of tension, and with minimum reaction. So the first thing God does is he shows up in the garden. When he's going to come and restore us, what does Jesus do? He shows up in presence. So he's emptying himself. So there's the discipline of dealing with tension is the discipline of being fully present in the midst of it without being reactive. And boy, is that tough, because I get into a fight or flight or freeze mode as a first reactive response. It's not evil, it's just limited. It's just the dynamics of that process.
Yeah,
that's great.
Thank you.
Love it. Preaching to my soul. This is so good. Yeah. So we have one question here from the audience.
Good.
And it's a common one, because I talk about tension and I talk about the necessity of difficulty in our lives to grow significantly. And this is a question I get often too, is that how can we make sure that tension doesn't rip us apart as a leader? when is tension not helpful anymore, or is it not tension anymore then by definition? Yeah.
Well, if we did a bell curve, on the one side of the bell curve would be apathy. On the other side of the bell curve would be stress. And the top of the bell curve would be tension. And so if you get too much tension, you dip over into stress. If you don't have enough tension in your life, you're on the apathetic side, or you're not engaged. And so a healthy level of tension is needed in a life in order to keep us fully present in the process. And so what often happens, Johan, and it's a great question, is the question isn't tension, because when we use the language of either fall apart or break apart, what you're really tapping into is control. And what tension reveals and cuts to the core of is my need as to be in control. And what tension provokes us at the deepest places of our heart is, Matt, you're not in control. And the illusion that you have, you are in control, I'm going to tear that down. Now, let me just qualify that the fruit of the Holy Spirit is self-control. So there's a healthy part of self-control where I'm in control of myself by choice in the power of the Holy Spirit, which we would call character, versus the flesh's need to be in control, which is rooted in power, which is going to be rooted in position, which is rooted in self-preservation. We are called to give our lives away. So the very definition of leadership from a biblical, as far as I can figure out, is servant. And the one definition of a servant is they're the one person in the household that's not in control. And so when you ask the question, you're really not asking about tension. You're asking about, I'm terrified of what it's going to reveal if I really am honest and authentic and show up in the midst of this thing. I might lose it and people might see me in the wrong way. And so you've got fundamental things going on there, Johan, that is a challenge for all of us, that we, it's to learn to walk with a limp. It's to learn the thorn in the flesh. It's to learn to go, okay, God, I die daily. There's a reason why Paul said he died daily. It's because there's this discipline of saying, I want to be captured. I want to be a slave of love. I want to be held in his presence, and I want to be authentic in that way. So I think that's, for me, when you ask that question, Johan, the question is not, about tension. The question is, it's going to get outside of my ability to control it. And that unspoken definition of leadership is they're always in control. And there are moments when a leader cannot be in control. And go back to what Tove asked a question earlier on this whole thing of tension and balance. And you can use balance the word balance in a couple of different ways, but in the way we use it, oftentimes I don't believe balance is biblical. I think the biblical emphasis is on order. So what we actually are looking for is in a risk-based order. So Paul says to have order in your community, but he never talks about balance. Balance minimizes strength, whereas order maximizes strength. And so there's a risk in order, and balance tends to minimize risk. And so I'm not a real strong proponent of a balanced life, because that's what we're really saying is we want to remove all the tension. And then I don't think we're in a biblical position anymore. I think we're in a biblical position when we say, what do we structure ourselves around? What's the essence of our identity? How does this create an order? How do we express this order as we go into the future in a vision or mission statement? And then how do we negotiate through the tensions that it arises? I mean, those are my thoughts.
So good. And I would say I'm feeling the tension right now, because to move on to the next thing, or to continue, because I want to ask you about control. I want to ask you about emotions. There are so many good things here that we could keep on digging for hours. But yeah, I'm going to give in to myself and move on to the next question, because there are other things we want to have your wisdom on. And as I said in the beginning, you've written a couple of books. Could you just give one book that maybe you've written that has talks about tension in it, for just as a reference?
Well, I've got a couple of books that I write. The best thing, if people are interested in this, I just put out an app I've written devotions for years around tension. So the app that you can use on a phone, actually you can download it on a computer now as well, but it's called Broken Top. It's a mountain in Oregon, but it also signifies that leaders are dealing with broken tops. So it's just called Broken Top. And it's a devotional app, and that's got 2 years worth of devotions dealing with tension and being present, and anybody can get it. It's free. You can find it at Apple or Android or any of those. So for my stuff, I've got a number of books. I write for the marketplace. I've written one on I'm trying to deal with humility, presence in the midst of tension, and then I've got some for the church as well. So I think there's 16 or 17 books that I have out there. But the really kind of the place to start for people that are wrestling with, okay, how do I look at this? The devotions, it's 300 words. That's what I'm working towards on those. They can download it, get them thinking about it, because a lot of this is, it's not just, what we're dealing with now is not information that people can download. We're talking about a muscle that has to be exercised and grown and developed. And so I wrote the devotions around to help people who are wrestling with pain and struggle and leadership in the midst of tension and uncertainty and just the world that we live in that process. So that's a big one that I do. Maybe what I can do is throw one of the books. I can give it to you guys. If you guys got a format or something, you can throw it out to people and we can just kind of give it away. One of the books, I don't know which one yet. I can see one of those, but maybe if there's a place that, in the system here, maybe we could do something like that. But those are some options.
Yeah. That would be great. Wonderful. That's very good. Thank you. So, as for leaving tension behind, well, we never leave tension. We always walk in it, otherwise we can't walk, right? So moving on to the next thing, it's also, so I work with GTS and I work with young leaders quite a bit, and a lot of them, quite a few of them have asked me lately if that, how do I start with becoming a coach / mentor and also what are some of the key skills that you want to develop to become a good coach or a mentor?
Well, I'm a bit of an unusual coach because I don't deal with technical expertise in my coaching. So I'm not interested in helping you do structural issues or tighten your vision or, budgets. I'm not interested in coaching any of those areas, and I won't do it. So the particular area that I coach in, as I said, it deals with humans and working with people. And so, it's really probably fits in the category of a narrative in regards to a person's story. And so the work that I do, and I would say if you're, really interested in transformational power in regards to working with people, the first thing you got to do is you got to be willing to do your own stuff. You got to be willing to go in and do your own heart work. You got to have conversations around elements of your own brokenness, elements of your strength. And two of the most simple tools that they're almost so simple as to be ridiculous is asking questions and listening. And I go back when I teach on this that, it's interesting that the first thing God does when he comes into the garden is he asks questions. And for me, that's one of the most profound moments that I know of in the Bible outside of Jesus, is because here he knows there's going to be ripple effects through humanity and the pain and the suffering. And the first thing he does when he walks into the garden is he asks 3 questions. Where are you? Who told you? And what have you done? So he's dealing with context, he's dealing with authority, and he's dealing with responsibility. And there's a divine order that he sets up in that structure. So the tool that he uses, it's almost if in that very first moment in our brokenness, he says, you guys are going to have to go into learning mode, and you're going to have to relearn how to ask questions. And I want you to be people who ask questions. I don't want you to lean on certainty. I want you to lean on relationship, and I want you to lean on inquiry and do this. And then while you're doing this, listen with your heart. And so if someone is interested in this, in discipling and working with people, one of the keys that they've got to be able to do is they've got to be able to kind of step into their own life and own their own life, because I have no right saying to someone else to do something that I haven't done. You can't take someone to a place that you haven't gone to. We would love to, but it doesn't work that way in the kingdom. Where I bottom out, that's as far as I can take you. So if you're really going to do transformation, discipleship or some mentoring, or get into a coaching role where you can work with, leaders and be engaged in the process, then you've got to slow down and really own what's going on in your life. Now, remember, this is for my particular focus on coaching. There are different coaches that will do different things that aren't about the heart issue. But anytime I'm working with a person, I always say, listen, we've got to do some heart work before. And I'm not talking about Christians. I'm just talking about people that I work with, because humanity needs to deal with their heart. That is the fundamental issue. So you got to be able to be in touch with yourself. You got to be able to own your own feelings. Tension doesn't make you anything. It just reveals what's inside of you. To own those, to be able to walk into conversations around that, to listen to yourself. And as I listen to myself, I can understand other people better as I do that. So, if you just worked on listening and inquiry, the couple others I would add is values, and help, where are boundaries, and then communication. But those are the core things. And as I said, maybe one of the books I'll throw in there, Walking Naked into the Land of Uncertainty, is a book that I wrote that has my model in it that they can that might help them look at and explore this more in line. So if you'll remind me later, we can put it out for people who would like a copy of it.
That's great. Cool. So what I'm hearing is that if you want to really go deep with people, you need to ask God to make your life really difficult.
Yeah.
You can walk through really strong hardships so you can be relatable. That's great.
Yeah. Well, that's a terrifying way to say it, but that's what, if you're going to help broken people, you got to own your own brokenness, and that there's no shortcut. There's just no shortcut to that process. That's
great. So I think that's good. I did a coaching course with Wolfgang and them, and then one of the principles there is this, what do you say? Good question rate comes out of a genuine interest and learning to love people well. So you ask good questions. Yeah. But to love well, vulnerability is an important part, and be able to relate to that. Do you have any thoughts, or what would you say? How does vulnerability play in coaching and mentoring? Yeah,
no, vulnerability is a really important word. I've been wrestling with humility these last years, and I'm trying to get it into the marketplace. I'm trying to leverage, and some of kind of the researchers in the marketplace are using the word humility. So I'm trying to bring in a biblical language for humility. So vulnerability would have three parts to it. So humility. So Andrew Murray says sinner, saint, and created. But I can't use that language in the marketplace. So the language I would use is finite, broken, and gifted. So the aspect of vulnerability has three pieces to it in humility. So I'm limited, so I don't know, and it's okay not to know. I'm broken. I'm broken. I've got shadows. I've got issues going on in my life that I need grace for. And then I've gifted. Sometimes the greatest gift of vulnerability is just to be your gift, is to just express your gift. In an authentic way that makes space for someone else. So vulnerability for me, translated within a grid of humility, would be, it's okay to be limited. I don't know, and it's okay. It's okay to walk with a limp. I'll use that language, because I have pieces in my life that I have to continually not train. You don't train the flesh. You take it to the cross. And then I have a gift. I bring a gift. And so vulnerability is the combination of those three expressions in our life in a way that represents who God is as clearly as we can.
So good. So another question that's related to mentoring and coaching when it comes to the skill part, and I run into this in DTS too, but also another, is the question of confidentiality. Yeah. Because it's this thing, I want to feel safe that I share with someone and that it won't be spread, but at the same time, authentic growth happens with others, and it needs you need a bigger group and other people, and it's always a tricky balance with how do I balance confidentiality? Any thoughts?
Yeah, well, again, I wouldn't use the word balance, but I know what you're trying to ask. So what I do is, like, I run online coaching groups, and And I think sometimes what we need is vulnerability within a group, and learn to be able to speak within a group. Usually about 6 is a good number, but to practice being vulnerable in a group and sharing. So this last year, I've been running online groups where we practice sharing and talking about vulnerability and engaging each other. And I'm amazed at when you hear someone else's heart, how much it can heal your own heart. Or when you share and put words to it before a group, it starts to give you a level of freedom and starts to put shame to chase it away. So, but I wouldn't do that. I would never talk about it. So the goal is to create a safe place. And I would always preface it by making sure everybody felt safe, by making sure that the parameters of the group were set, that we don't talk about what happens in this group outside of this group, and that I work extra hard to make sure everybody who's present with me feels safe, because it only takes one faux pas where confidentiality is abused before people go, this is not safe. And you can't make many mistakes when you're talking about a genuinely safe place. So I can be a bit fierce at times around safety when if people aren't being safe, because it's such a high priority for the group that I'm working with in that process. So you've got to kind of set up an actionable agreement about what are our boundaries, what makes safety, and then in our sharing, if something is shared here, does it share outside of here? And it doesn't, and it shouldn't. And if you're, I would be as direct as to say, if someone is sharing something in confidence with you that you're sharing with someone else, then you're not modeling the heart of God.
That's good. Yeah, that's really good. And I think the last one for in this section of questions here, what will be some pitfalls for coaches and mentors to look out for?
Oh, well, the funny thing is, I don't think of coaching as a vocation. I just think of coaching as expressing who I am. So I sometimes I have a bit of a funny hat when it comes to coaching, because coaching is a skill that people put on and put off, but it's not the way I view coaching. It's just the way God made me. I ask questions. I'm interested in heart issues, so they would be the human issues that will get you into trouble can translate into coaching on that side. So when I'm working with coaching, or if I'm in a coaching mode, I've got to figure out how to be authentic, how not to judge, how to be genuine and real and speak the truth in love to the situation. I've got to be authentic and listening in that process. So the genuine communication pitfalls. Don't say something I don't mean, or twist the truth, or imply, or infer, or all of those are going to be related to the coaching side of things, because coaching is in essence communication. I'm creating a safe place. And remember, I'm not talking about the broader spectrum. I'm just talking about mine, that when I'm working with someone, I want them to know that in this relationship, and my coaching, even though when the contractual side is done, for many of them, I maintain a relationship for, sometimes for years, where we can write and talk to each other. I just got a note from a guy who moved to the U.S. and I would work with him here in Singapore, and it's natural for him to talk at a heart level with me, and I value that, and that's a really important part of the process. So,
yeah. That's good.
Fantastic. This is so good, and I feel the tension of. I feel like I want to take notes during this, and it's kind of hard, being a host here.
Yeah.
So good, Matt. I was thinking of a quote just as you were talking. And this quote says, "Forgive yourself for not knowing what you didn't know before you learned it."
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I thought you would. Because, we feel this tension often also as leaders, that a sense of, you need to have the answers.
Yeah.
And the most freeing thing you can do in that setting is to just be able to say, I don't know, but
that's right.
I can try and find out,
Yeah.
And you don't have to be in control.
The nice thing in the world that we live in is we don't know. We honestly don't know what is going to be happening in a year. Unfortunately, that should bring freedom to us. It doesn't, but it should, because it's like, well, okay, then I just get to be authentic and show up today and tomorrow and the next day. And then whatever I'm in that day, God will give me the grace for. And because I have a value set that is eternal, I can continue to walk into things irregardless, because my value set won't change.
Exactly. We'll probably continue learning in the next life. I'm pretty sure about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So here's another question for you. Well, it's probably no secret that our mission, Youth Mission, we are not, or generally not, world champions in having crucial conversations. Would you agree to that? And if so, I knew you would. And if so, why do you think that is?
Oh, your greatest strength is your greatest weakness. And YWAM has a great strength. We're a high task orientation. We're focused on getting a job done, and anything that slows that down terrifies us. And so that great strength turns into a weakness where the challenge of slowing down, of reflection, I run into, it's not just YWAM, I run into this here in Singapore. Singapore is a meritocracy. We're defined by what we do. This is a part of the very essence of our being. And people who are drawn to YWAM are people who are action oriented. I want to get stuff done. I don't have time for all this other soft skills stuff. Just let's go out and save the world and get the, real men go out and do evangelism. All this other stuff is for wimps. But you again, standing back, the culture of YWAM is a great strength, but all cultures have a weakness, and the weakness is we won't slow down. We won't ask the difficult questions at times. We won't kind of talk at a heart-to-heart level. I think we have moments where that happens, and those are very precious moments. But our strengths distract us. And so I think part of it is recognizing when our strength serves us, and when our strength sets on our brokenness, then it becomes unhealthy, and it becomes a task orientation to prove. When it rests on humility, then it's an expression of God in us, but it's not got that urgency to it that we like to that keeps us preoccupied. You can tell if you're preoccupied with a task, if when you're silent, you start to get really antsy, you haven't resolved just being at peace within yourself, because it's, God says, I will be exalted amongst the nations. I will be exalted in the earth, and he is going to do that. I want to be sensitive to the tension and YWAM in that. I mean, I have some views about that, but I have a deep, deep love for YWAM and the beauty and the strengths of us. And I think, a good discipline that all organizations and all people have to learn is, how do we deal with the tensions? Where is it a strength? What did my family teach me? What's helpful about that? And what do I need to relearn in this process? Because it's a huge issue for all humanity, not just YWAM, but for all people, all organizations, and all issues.
Great. We actually have a question here from Ian, and he's asking, do you have a good example or good examples of times you helped someone move forward when they felt stuck, like in ministry, life, and other? And I guess that's a crucial conversation there. Can you give an example?
Yeah. Every person I work with is stuck. So take your pick. It doesn't matter. There's a friend whose 16-year-old son needs to have a conversation. So everybody, you might as well just think of it this way. Everybody you're dealing with is stuck in one way or another. And that doesn't mean they're evil. So Paul goes from the beginning of his ministry, he's the least of the apostles, the middle of ministry is the least of the saints, and the end of his ministry is the worst of all sinners. Now, how did he go from the least of the apostles, chosen, or who should have been one of the group, to the worst of all sinners? Well, there was just a deepening heart revelation of his own heart and his desperate need to be saved from his own Pharisaical righteousness. So Ian, it's a great question, but it presupposes. So if I just go to the question, it presupposes that a few of them are stuck. There's nobody I'm dealing with, either at an organizational level, at a team level, or at an individual level, that isn't stuck in some way. That's the nature of a broken world. And so the work of listening, the work of helping someone who is, I got notes of pages of people, and because I take notes when I am working with someone of, someone who comes. Sorry, I just have.
I can help you, Matt. I can help you.
Thank you, Tove. Save me.
Let's just use me. I don't know if you remember. I was on another base, and I was stuck. Yeah. And I was very, very close to hitting the wall, like very close. And you happened to be on base that week or weeks, and I thought I'm so stuck, and it felt like I had just white noise in my forehead, in a very tough situation because of certain circumstances. Yeah. And I asked to talk to you, and you ask questions as you do, and he says, so hey, what's going on? You asked. So I'm stuck. I said, I have white noise and I can't think. And you said, and when you can't think, what happens? It was like, I'm an ideas person. I will get ideas, and I had no ideas come for several days. It was just quiet. Yeah. And you said, and what happens? And I thought, I don't know. And I am not working, not like working, but I am not functioning. Yeah. And I couldn't spit the word out. It's like, when I can't think, I can't. Then you said, then you die. I thought, yes, that's right. Then I die. And I'm dying right now. And you said, okay, this is simple. You need to get out of here, like right now, this week, not next week. If you wait until next week, you will have somebody to come and pick you up, and it will take 2 years to be picked up. You can't do it yourself. But if you leave right now, you can probably pick yourself up, I was like, okay. And it was actually what I needed to hear. You got me unstuck in a situation I couldn't think. Yeah. And you helped me to think,
Yeah. Well,
I don't know if you.
I loved your honesty, Tove, and we've been friends for many years. But if you listen with your heart to people, with no judgment, and you hear, then you're not afraid of results. And I'm not afraid of walking into pain with a friend. I'm not afraid of entering into their lives. And I definitely would say, if I said, when I said that to you, I could be wrong. My point isn't to be prophetic or to be right. My point is to be human and to share life in that. And if God can use it, then all the more brilliant to it. So I love that as an honest example, Tove.
Sure. You're so welcome. I think you have a question, Johan.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. So how do we kind of touched on this earlier, like how to become a mentor or what some principles, but can anyone be a mentor or a coach?
Sure.
Is there certain personality types and functions better with,
There's certain, we could call, there's certain kind of personalities are going to be more drawn to it than others. And so that, it helps to have a certain makeup and, in some of the intelligence side, an intrapersonal or self-awareness is an important piece. And some people are more naturally gifted with that than others. But from my perspective, if you're human, you can be a mentor. And if you're human, you can listen and you can ask questions. And the beauty is kids model this in absolute simplicity. They're not afraid of asking questions, and they're listening. you can tell a kid, because when kids are being really kids, they're not missing anything. They're picking up the unspoken message. They're picking up the emotions. They're picking up everything. And they may not be consciously aware of it, but they know exactly what's going on. And when there's fear in a family, they know it. And so, in some ways, what we're really saying is going back to being childlike, not childish, but what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be fully present and to listen and not be afraid of pain? I think that's another big thing for me is I'm not afraid of pain. It's not like I want pain, but you can't share anything to me that would shock me so much that would cause me to judge you or try to reach out and react to you in a way, because I've heard a lot of stuff. And I'm not afraid of what you can share, and you can't share anything that would shock me. And most of it I would discover in myself, and I'm already aware of what a human is worth of. There's a reason why Jesus said he didn't entrust himself to humanity. It's not that he didn't love them. It's just he knew what was in them. And so there is this place where some of us are better equipped. There is a discipline to it, and there is some work to do it, but the basic skills of listening and asking questions, of having clear boundaries, of owning your values and communicating, we all are called to do. That's just what discipleship is.
Yeah.
That's right.
Good.
Well, Matt, we have a question. It might be a little bit of a tension question here, but you love tension. So we have warned you ahead of time, but in every leadership lounge, we always ask this question in order to learn,
Yeah.
So could you tell us of a significant mistake you've done as a leader or in life that we can learn from?
I think the biggest one that I learned, when I was doing my research, when I was studying YWAM and I was looking at control, I had defaulted to my head, and academics unfortunately pushes us to our head. And one of the things that I had to walk through that was really painful for me was I had to not default from my head where I could try to be in control, but I had to try to default to my heart and to walk out of situation. And I can't go into the specifics of it, of learning where at a heart level I hadn't learned the ability to speak at a heart level, to speak in humility, to speak vulnerably, and defaulted and took sides and got into trouble, not morally, but the dynamics of it was, okay, how do I, and the interesting thing was that it was probably one of the most significant things in my life as far as teaching me that I learned the pain of humanity and own limitations and how my need to be in control. And when I learned that about myself, it gave me far more empathy for other people. So I had a default mode that said I have to be in control. I have a default mode that, I kind of tucked it down and put it away and gone into academics. And then walking through that where I had gone to my head and raised questions and within a missions context. And I had to really kind of slow down and say, okay, God, you have used this situation and you have broken me, and I embrace that and I own that in my life. And I think, again, that was a significant point because I had finished my PhD, which took me from an academic point of view to a human point of view that said, this is what all of us are terrified of, that we're terrified of making mistakes and the accusation or feeling like you know what you're doing. And I had to just own that and go, okay, I get it now. I get what people are terrified of. I get why people are dominating, controlling, seeking power, because it's terrifying. And I went through a season of panic attacks, anxiety attacks, and all of the kind of emotional things where I finally just had to learn to say, okay, God, at a heart level, I have to let go. And I understand the human need, flesh's need to be in control. And it took me a couple of years of really some hard work, some painful hard work, to get to the place where I had to say, okay, God, this will give me, thank you for this. Thank you for this situation that I had to walk through, that allowed me to trust you at a new level so that I could be empathetic, so that anytime I'm working with someone, I'm thinking, oh, I know your pain. Oh, I got your pain. I understand the terror of this, and I bring no judgment, and I'll walk with you through it. So I, as I said, I can't go into the specifics of it, but it was a really painful situation where I just felt like someone had stabbed me. But a good God, gracious, kind, loving, walked with me and said, come on, bud, we're going to do this. I'm going to teach you through this, and we're going to learn. And I did. It was a life-saving event, because it's really what opened the door for a lot of the work I now do with executives and people that are stuck. I understand stuckness in that process. So I'm not sure that's specific enough, but that'll have to do. I think we're about out of time.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much.
That's so good. Maybe as we're going in for landing here then, what are maybe one or two books that you read in the past month, or maybe in the past years, because it is so significant, that you could recommend to us to dive into, to grow ourselves? And
yeah, I was trying to think about that. I think a really good book, it's not Christian, it's Ronald Heifetz's book, Adaptive Leaders, where he's looking with leaders dealing with values and how do we adapt to an uncertain world. That gave me some really good work. Also, I can't think of the name of it. I was a psychiatrist. Anyway, I'm embarrassed now because I've read it 3 or 4 times.
Google can take care of that.
Yeah, I should.
I'm looking. Adapt Leaders.
Adaptive Leaders. His name is Heifetz. He's a Harvard professor. Ronald Heifetz, Heifetz, is his work. He's got 2 or 3 books on adaptive leadership. That's a good book that it's a good book. It's not obviously a religious book, but it deals with the human dynamics, and it gives you a nice way to look at it. Yeah, so thanks, Mark. The Practice of Adaptive Leadership, Tools and Tactics for Changing. He's got 2 or 3 books out there all around adaptive leadership. You could find one of those in that process. If you give me 30 seconds, I could look up on my leadership notes. Friedman, Edwin Friedman, is a great book, probably one of the best. It's called Failure of Nerve. And I have read that over and over for years, just kind of soaking in it. No books are perfect. I always try to go back to the Word and God's perspective and all of that. But those are a couple of really good books that Edwin Friedman, Failure of Nerve is the other one. So yeah, those would be 2 that I would recommend getting your teeth into and reading slowly.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I don't be lost our scribe here, so I don't know if somebody can put it on the in the chat. But this has been so good, Matt. Good to see you as well.
Yes.
And just so rich. Really appreciate you taking the time. I'm wondering if you should try and talk you into doing an LDX, like a TED Talk, maybe another time. If
Sure.
Yeah,
I'd love to do it. If I can help, I would love to.
You can certainly. I want to say to everyone as well that next month's theme, that is building authentic community. And we have Jose Lister as one of those doing the LDX. There's like a little TED Talk type thing. And we have Johnny and Jan doing one as well. There'll be articles by Joachim Magnus, that works in Oslo, and Rune, working in Romania. But we really want to highlight something we are very excited about, and that is FutureWise. Some of you have heard about it already. So February the 22nd, we will have a 2-hour online leadership summit called FutureWise, and we'll try and have this like 4 times a year. There will be really top quality input from leaders also outside of our mission to speak into us. This time we have Patrick Dixon. He's a futurist, he's a forecaster, and he's also he's top speaker, a top-notch speaker. You can look him up online as well. He has a website called globalchange.com just to get to know him a little bit. He's one of the most famous, well-known futurists. So we are very lucky to have him. And we will also have a Benedictine monk that's going to come and share with us about being radical. And this word radical, it actually means literally to return to the roots. So in one way, we're both returning to the roots together with this monk, and then we are looking forward into the future. What is the future of missions? What is the future of the church? How can we navigate in this field of the future? So very much looking forward to that. We are advertising it also both on in this Facebook group of ours, but also online on the ELLC website. So don't miss that, and tell your other fellow YWAM leaders here in Europe. It's not that others are welcome, should there be a leader from here and there, elsewhere in the world, they are welcome, but we are not advertising it elsewhere. It is, we are looking at the European soil during this time. So I believe this is all for now. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you again, Matt. We are honored and good to work with you, Johan. Thank you.
It's great to see you, Tove and Johan. It's a privilege to hang out for a bit. I just wish we could do it more. One of these trips, I'll get to Europe, and I'd love to catch up with both of you.
Great. We will make a fire and have a good chat.
Nice.
So thank you. Bye for now.
Okay. See you guys.